This is Eric Himel, celebrity stylist and fashion expert, and you're listening to my interview with Elaine Goodman on gogoodman.com.au.
Growing up in Toronto and Dallas, where did your exposure to fashion come from? I can't imagine that Texans are very fashion savvy.
Well, I mean, I think they're known, the women, for their big hair and their makeup, and they definitely are into fashion, but some people would not necessarily call it fashion savvy. But my interest in fashion came along way before I made it to Texas, for sure. I was just one of those kids that just was always interested in fashion, growing up with a TV as my babysitter and watching a lot of shows and always really being interested in the clothes, watching, pageants, watching award shows, movies, just really soaking that in. And ended up, looking at fashion magazines, probably, a lot younger than most people. I just remember it was something I was always interested in, always watching my parents getting dressed, and enjoyed going shopping for myself and with them, giving unsolicited advice.
What did interest you about them? I mean, I can imagine as a kid in all those magazines and TV shows, there's a lot of colour that would probably attract your attention. Was there something else apart from that attracted you to it?
Yeah, for me, I don't think I'm a typical stylist. For me, it's the psychology of clothes and dressing and how people react to you. It's a very, obviously, superficial thing, fashion, but it's also an extension of who you are on the inside. And whether you're watching a show and you're looking at characters, you still have to take that into consideration, or you're looking at magazines. And so I was always really fascinated. I was a pretty shy kid. I was skinny. I was small. I wasn't really outgoing. And I think it was a way for me to learn how to express yourself. And then later on, I learned to do it for myself and then for other people. So it was everything, the color, the actual fashions. And if you think about costumes in movies, it's really kind of the same thing. Whatever you wear, think about it as a costume, except for real life.
From doing my research, you were adamant, as you said, fashion and style was your calling, and straight after finishing school, you moved to New York City to pursue it. In hindsight, was there anything that you forgot to plan about making that big move across the country?
I mean, I would say yes and no. It wasn't like going to your typical university where, you leave high school and a lot of kids go to universities and their first year is a party year. You're a freshman. You're out on your own. You're not with your parents. And it really wasn't like that. When I went to school, I went to Parsons, which is arguably, the best-known fashion design school in the United States and one of them in the world. And it's like going right into a PhD kind of program. So I was not prepared for that. I also wasn't prepared for the fashion industry in New York being pretty full of people who were pretty, jaded and bitter. And so you either like that and you join in, or you don't like it. And I really tended not to like it, that aspect of it.
So who were the big, I guess, stylists around when you were coming through? Was fashion style a big thing? Fashion styling a big thing? When you
No, it didn't exist.
Ah.
No, it did not. It wasn't even an option. That's why I went right to study fashion design, because there wasn't such thing as a fashion stylist. There were people who did wardrobe, and so if I always tell people a really good thing is to look at the Oscars, the Academy Awards in the 70s and the 80s, and look at the celebrities and how they're dressed. They didn't have stylists yet. They're pretty much dressed awful. And a lot of them would go buy things on their own, off the rack. And so before that, in the 60s, 50s, 40s, it was the Hollywood movie system. And they'd have these amazing wardrobe people that would dress all the stars, Elizabeth Taylor, Sophia Loren, all those people. And they would dress them for these premieres and things like that. So there was this period in the 70s and 80s that was this very strange period in fashion where it wasn't great in the public eye. And so when I decided that I wasn't going to move forward and become a fashion designer, I thought, I don't want to, no need to be in New York. I don't want to be here. It's too cold in the winter, and I moved to Los Angeles. And that was in the early 90s, and that's when stylists kind of came to be.
As you just mentioned, you're leading on really well for my questioning. Once you graduated from design school, you moved back to LA. What was the big difference between LA and New York in terms of fashion? Or as in exposure and work-wise, what was the big difference?
Yeah, there's still a huge difference. I mean, I think New York is just way more urban. It has that street style, and people, I think it's like any kind of urban city. It's kind of like London, like Rome, like Melbourne maybe, places like that where it's just people are a lot more sophisticated and it's kind of innate. People just have this sense of style even if you're not spending a lot of money. In LA, because it's almost like, it's not urban, it's almost like a big suburb, and you have to remember so much of the city is based around the entertainment world, which is kind of fake, that you get this kind of, and the weather on top of it too. You're not dressing for the different, climate changes. So it's always nice here. People don't dress up as much, so it's really about people's bodies here, about their cars. And I would say fashion is what you kind of mentioned that you might have been into 5 years ago. It's really, really casual. You see great bodies, but you see them in LA wearing, expensive pair of jeans and a tank top and a, expensive pair of shoes and a nice car. And so it was a whole kind of shift, a paradigm shift aesthetically moving from New York to LA. But, as far as being a stylist, especially if you want to work with a lot of celebrities and things like that, LA is definitely the place to be for that kind of thing. So I love both cities for different reasons.
What's the difference between styling and designing? You studied design. Was there a clear progression into the styling industry?
There's a huge difference that people don't realize, and I deal with it probably on a daily basis for my work. Is
so
that,
let's clear it up.
A lot of times, no, I mean, the layman wouldn't necessarily know the difference, but a lot of times people don't understand that designers are designing these things in their head, and sometimes they think of their customer, sometimes they're not. They're creative people. Stylists are the conduit between the person, reality, and the designer. And sometimes a designer could be a really good designer, but they can't put things together well. So the stylists are basically really great editors. They edit and they take things from different designers and they put it on people in the best way they can, really, in my opinion, to make the person look and feel better. A designer doesn't necessarily do that, but they're the creators of these things. And without designers, stylists would not be, because we need the designs, we need the product.
So a designer might create a pair of pants, but they may not necessarily create a top that matches it. And then you have to go to another designer to try and find a top that matches that pair of pants because you like that pair of pants. Correct?
I mean, that's one scenario. Or you just, for me, I don't necessarily want to, dress somebody head to toe, one designer, because that's not really being a great stylist. It's not really being creative. One of my things I pride myself on is styling people and finding an individual look for them. So it doesn't look like, you don't walk into Chanel and say you have enough money to buy whatever you want. You're buying the whole look on the mannequin. Well, anyone else can do that has money. Walk into a Chanel boutique and buy this whole look. Well, that's not creative, and that's not being a good stylist. And a good stylist typically wouldn't do that. So it's partly because of that. A lot of designers do create the whole look, but part of the fun of it is really, picking and choosing different things from different places to create really, again, an individual look and something that's going to be the best for the person you're styling.
That's very interesting because one issue, I think it's a mental issue that I have. If I'm dressing for, like, for example, going to the beach, if I wear a pair of board shorts, I kind of feel a bit weird wearing a different brand t-shirt. So if I've got like Quicksilver board shorts, I'll try and find a Quicksilver t-shirt to go with it rather than wear an Adidas t-shirt because I kind of feel weird mixing brands.
Well, I think you have a typical kind of Garanimal type of mentality, which is, very like, oh, well, if it's from the same, manufacturer or brand, then it's going to look better. And also it's going to be easier. And I think a lot of people think that way. And I always use as an example is, that's very interesting, that I don't usually have to know, how to do what other people do for a living. But what other people have to do that I do for a living is get up in the morning and dress themselves because they can't walk around naked. And nobody teaches you that in school. It's not like a course. So all these things that you're talking about, and I hear it from people all the time, whether they're regular people, whether they're celebrities, no one's taught them how to do these things, how to shop, how to put things together, about tailoring, about color, about fabric, about proportion, or any of these things, nor should they have because it's not something that's taught in school, but they have to dress themselves or hire a stylist like me. So what you're talking about is a really kind of common way of thinking, but I would suggest to start thinking outside the box. I mean, it's more time consuming for sure, but if you're trying to find more of an individual style or you want to kind of change your style, shake it up, start mixing brands. That would be a great basic place to start.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said easiest.
Mm-hmm.
I read that you
For sure.
I read that you quickly expanded your business throughout the USA when you moved to LA. You expanded to the US and Canada as a stylist in a reasonably new area, a reasonably new profession. That's what I'm trying to say. What techniques were available to you in terms of marketing and spreading your brand? Because there wasn't any such thing as social media back in the early 90s. How did you was it just word of mouth?
Yeah, pretty much. It definitely is word of mouth and referrals. But I also worked really hard to push myself to get myself out there and known. So, to make yourself known in magazines or in the media or TV, places like that. Obviously, having great, when you started doing websites and things like that. And then the word of mouth and just a good reputation. And I love working with people who are, not just in New York or LA, what people consider, a lot of stylists would consider the only places they would work. Because to me, especially nowadays, people have tons of money who live in, odd places. And I work with all different types of people. I mean, I actually style teenagers a lot, which a lot of people find fascinating and strange at the same time. They're thinking, what teenager needs a stylist and who's paying for these things? But, if you think about it, typically a teenage girl isn't going to listen to their mother. And, there's a lot of responsibility when you're dressing and a teenage girl. This is when they're forming their self-esteem and their sense of themselves. And I find it really, really a big responsibility, but really, really interesting at the same time. So, I just kind of went through a lot of different channels to kind of get myself out there. Not necessarily the same as a typical stylist, but, I just followed my own path.
What makes you or made you different from other stylists? Is fashion a subjective thing, or do all stylists share a similar opinion of what looks good or what looks bad?
No, I don't. I would say they don't, and unfortunately, well, not necessarily unfortunately, but because people can choose clothes and that they can call themselves a stylist, but it's so much more than that. What I think sets myself apart are a couple of things. I don't think most stylists have a design background. Having a design background definitely gives you an advantage, I think, because if you know about design, how things are made, tailoring, proportion, all that stuff, you're really going to be better at what you do for your clients, because it's ultimately about the client's body and understanding that and understanding how things are going to look on them. So for me, also, I split my time between what I call non-celebrities or regular people and celebrities. And I also do photo shoots and things like that for magazines. But what's nice about that is you get this really nice mixture of, when you're doing red carpet stuff and you're doing celebrities, that's not real. I mean, it's still as important, and I still have the same philosophy. But when I'm working with non-celebrities, which a lot of stylists don't do things like that, it really is a great way to learn about all different body types and shapes and people's needs. A lot of celebrities, not all of them, but, when you're looking at a lot of celebrities, you see, or models, you're seeing like these very size 0, size 2 bodies that are kind of almost sample sizes. And in the real world, it's not like that. So a good stylist, I think, can style anybody, regardless of their body shape, their age, and anything else.
When each season ticks over, do all stylists have the same opinion of what's, I guess, hot or in each season? When you look at like the fashion shows and stuff, is that all stylists are going to go for what's there, or do they all discover their own little things around the world that they like?
No, I would say they all have their own opinions for sure, but magazines and stores, they are pushing trends on you all the time for different reasons. I mean, it's a business. It's just, ultimately it's a business. When you're reading, Vogue magazine, that's not just a magazine. Those aren't just pretty pictures. That's a business. September Vogue is a huge business. That's the bulk of their business for the year because they sell the most advertising then. And it's all connected. The advertising, the brands, it's all connected. So, a smart stylist is going to look outside the mainstream because, again, they're going to want to, I would think, style their clients in a way that doesn't look like everybody else. So they're always going to have different opinions about trends and things. Some stylists will hop on one trend, while another stylist would say, I would never do that. So it just varies from person to person.
I read something very interesting that you discovered in early childhood, that fashion and style can shape public perception. As an adult, do you think fashion and style sometimes takes more of the attention than the actual person and what they've achieved or what they do? And is that justifiable? I mean, you look at, for example, athletes and politicians. People are always looking at what they're wearing, but they're really accomplished people. Do you think their style sometimes outshadows their personal achievements?
Well, I don't think you can change, what people are really at the core, and that is people, are visual creatures, and they take information within milliseconds, and this isn't taught, this is something how they're born, and they make decisions, and it's a very complicated process, how it's filtered and used. Is it something that's fair? I don't think it's necessarily fair, but I don't think it's necessarily something that can be changed. And so, the woman or man who is very accomplished and pays no attention to how they are on the outside, I think that's kind of silly, because to get to the inside, you have to go through the outside. And I'm not taking away or placing any more importance on the outside. I'm saying that that's kind of the reality, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I became a stylist, because if you can use techniques to pull people in to the more important part, which is who you are on the inside, then I think that's really a powerful, it's really a powerful thing. And instead of trying to change people, I say just use it to your advantage.
It's interesting, yeah, because politicians here, they're judged a lot even in the newspapers and things like that, they're judged by what they're wearing. But I guess, as you said, the first image you get of the person is what they're wearing, and then you dig a bit deeper. So that's a good point.
Yeah, there are universal perceptions of what is attractive that are scientific, proven through scientific studies. And these politicians, whether there or in the U.S. or wherever, they're highly aware of that. And people can lose elections based on perceptions. And if people know that, why not use that to your advantage? Obviously, being a good leader isn't about the suit or dress you're wearing. It's about being a good leader. But if you're not going to get elected, then you can't be that good leader.
Why is fashion such a big industry? Every awards ceremony around the world now has a televised red carpet event, and you said 20, 30 years ago, stylists didn't even exist. So how did style and fashion become such a big industry? How was the stylist invented, I guess?
I think it was more about the celebrity than the stylist. And I think when you saw the shift of when they started putting celebrities on the cover of magazines and using celebrities to endorse, products, makeup lines, jewelry, clothing, things like that. And that combined with social media. So what those two things did is it brought people closer to celebrity. And I don't think celebrity is a new thing. People have always been interested in that, getting a glimpse of celebrity and things like that. But what those two things did is it made people say, if a celebrity is endorsing or wearing this lipstick and I buy the lipstick, I'm one step closer to that celebrity. Maybe being like that celebrity a little, or just being near them. And then with social media, you can then express that too. So I think that's kind of what happened. Those two things made it so huge. And then it just kind of turned into, again, the combination of the interest, the celebrity, models becoming celebrities themselves. And so there's a lot of crossover with the celebrity and the model. And who's the model and who's the celebrity. The models have become celebrities and celebrities have become models. And so that's very interesting. And so I just think it's just this, and everything's so immediate. And with social media now, being able to kind of repost things, look at pictures, repost pictures, and state your opinion, I think it just makes it that much more powerful, and I don't really think it's going away.
I read what was trending on Facebook probably a couple of weeks ago now, and one of the articles was about Kendall Jenner just wearing a pink jacket to an event. Why is that trendworthy?
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, I don't know if I have enough time to explain that flow chart, but basically, it started with Kim Kardashian, her sister or half sister, with her sex tape, and then what spawned was a whole family and doing different things, and a really smart mother as a manager managing these kids, and so she has capitalized on her daughters right now, Kendall and Kylie, who are really, really popular and have been on the Kardashian show, and now Kendall being she was one of the most sought-after runway models for this spring 16 fashion season. And again, because of that and social media and her being, she's young, so she's I don't know what you want to call it. She's an icon for these girls. She's a role model. And so when you have that kind of power and you have that kind of social media influence, of course, anything. It's like in the olden days before social media, Oprah was that person, and she still is to an extent. But if she, she had her favorite things show, and she said, "This is my favorite thing." It would be sold out the next day. And so it's just about the power of media and the power of the person, and now the power of social media.
Has social media changed that and made it easier to sell stuff?
I think to me it's a double-edged sword. I like social media because I love the reach, but it can be abused, the power, because I don't necessarily agree with everything that's on there. These people who have the numbers have the power. And like you said, whether, Kendall Jenner, inadvertently or not, it wears this jacket, or, she's being paid to wear it, whatever the reason is, people are going to take notice. I mean, it's like Kate Middleton. People watch what the royalty and the royals, especially in England, so closely. And everything that she wears, it gets sold out. Again, it's just because it's not even about necessarily the dress or the piece of clothing. It's like, I have a piece of Kate Middleton somehow if I wear this dress. And the same thing with Kendall Jenner. It's a very interesting thing. I think it really talks about, our society and how everybody wants to kind of be a little bit acknowledged or famous.
Do you think that's healthy? Or is healthy the wrong word to use? Or
No, I don't think that's the wrong word. I know exactly what you're asking, and I don't want to say it's unhealthy or healthy. I don't think it's the best thing to focus on. I think it's very understandable, and again, my whole thing is, one question I always get, which I always think it's funny and silly, is people will say, "What's in? What do I need now? What's trendy?" And I always say, "Who cares?" So I'm kind of the opposite. And I have clients who actually are like, I don't want this piece that you're showing me because I saw it in Vogue and Harper's Bazaar and every magazine, and I saw it on the red carpet, and I saw it on this person and this celebrity. I don't want to be seen in it. It's like, it doesn't look new and fresh. So there are people who are aware of that, and they want the opposite of that. So I don't think it's that healthy. I think it's normal, and I think in small doses it's probably a normal human reaction. But I think you have to really understand what you're reacting to and make sure you realize you're not getting manipulated by the whole process. And it all goes back, for me, to who you are as a person and finding your individual style. And if it happens to be that pink jacket that Kendall Jenner's wearing, that's great. But if you're following, everybody or her, and you're copying everything, you're really losing your own identity, and it's kind of it's a shame to me. Then something's lost, and then I would say that's not that healthy.
And that kind of links back to the question before about it being justifiable. You said Oprah and Kate Middleton. The first thing we see about them when we see them in the media is what they're wearing, as opposed to what they've achieved in their careers and how much of a role model they could actually be because of their work ethic. But what we're seeing is what they're wearing. Is that justifiable?
Well, I don't know if that's even a proper question to ask, if it's justifiable. It just is.
It just is.
But I think, again, people who are smart and people who have a real interest, I think it's okay. I like to give permission to people to say it's okay to be interested in both. What Kate Middleton is wearing, but also what she's doing. Just, don't put so much emphasis on the superficial. I like to help people look good, but at the end of the day, I know, I'm not, fighting ISIS in the Middle East, and I'm not a fireman. I'm not doing open heart surgery. I'm a stylist. These are clothes people, So you have to like kind of understand, at the end of the day, that it's just clothes. I mean, I'm not saying don't think about it, but you need balance. So as long as you have that balance and you understand that there's a person behind those clothes, and hopefully you have an interest in one of those people and what they're doing, then I think it's okay. Then it is justifiable. But if it's just about the clothes all the time, I mean, listen, you're talking to a stylist, and I love shopping in clothes. Like, I can shop for 12 hours straight. But I have a lot of other interests, and they don't involve clothes.
And I guess, yeah, you've got to have that balance between, I guess the clothing is the icing on the cake, because if you're not happy on the inside, I mean, as you said, you're not a fireman, you're not a psychologist, you can put the icing on the cake, but they've got to have the right mindset coming into you, correct?
Oh, yeah, I mean, definitely. And you know what? I can smell that. I can smell that a mile away when they're not happy. And I'm pretty vocal. Like, I can, tell them that these things aren't going to make them happy. And it's usually like the people who have the least responsibilities with the most money seem to fall into that. But then again, I've worked with people who have, say they've lost a lot of weight. They need a new wardrobe. This is going to be important to them. They have a new body. Maybe they've lost a spouse, through a spouse has passed away, or they've gotten divorced. I mean, then it becomes a connection to how can you help them with their self-esteem and self-worth. And then I think that is justifiable to say that I can use clothes and things like that to help them. That's not superficial, because you are then getting a reaction from other people. There's a connection again. It's not necessarily about judging somebody, but people, if they feel good, they'll carry themselves differently, they'll act differently. It's all interconnected.
Have you ever seen something on a catwalk where you think, what the hell is that? Why is that out there?
More times than not. I mean, I view like every, show for every season. And I mean, yeah, some of the things are just ridiculous. And listen, there are designers who are known for ridiculous, and I applaud them when they're not, doing things that are just common, and they're not for everybody. They're truly like art, and they're for the select few. But, oh my goodness, yes, every season I'm looking at these things and saying, WTF, what were they thinking? It's silly, because I'm also thinking, like, don't you want to sell these things? Don't you want to be able to, have a show the next season and be around? I'm like highly aware that, it's a business for people, and they have to be able to sell the things. I mean, if you have enough money and you're like that artist who doesn't care, they just paint to paint, and you don't care if someone buys your painting, more power to you. But most people can't afford to have that kind of business as a designer. They need to sell things.
So how do they sell things if their idea of fashion is like having a person draped over the front of another person walking down a catwalk?
I know who you're talking about.
I just saw that in the news the other day, and that's apparently the new thing. I'm not going to see
that.
anyone walking down the beach wearing that.
I love that. I loved that show, and I love that designer. That was kind of a political statement, and also a statement about women. And I like that. I mean, if you're talking about Rick Owens, and he's a really smart designer. Shows like that can give designers an opportunity to make statements, political statements, statements about humanity, and that was a statement about women and women carrying the load in life and how much they do carry. And I think that was funny. I don't think he was saying you should actually wear that. It was one way to get attention and also to express himself about his ideas, and it worked because we're talking about it. Ultimately, though, if you look at his clothes off the runway, he makes really amazing clothes. But yes, there are people who are looking at that and saying, what can I do that's going to be like the next crazy thing? What can I do that only Lady Gaga would wear? And, you know, if you want to be that kind of designer, you can, but then you're designing for like a select few, and that's fine. If you can do that. For me, I like something in between, something that is original, but still something that is wearable. And call me crazy, I like people to look attractive, you know, and that, you know, attractiveness to different people is a lot of different things. But I think as a stylist, one of my jobs is to find what makes my client look and feel attractive. And I think they also look to me, especially if they're, you know, in the public eye. You know, there's so many people that criticize fashions on celebrities now. I personally wouldn't want to be criticized. You know, I'd want to be, you know, I'd probably want good feedback. But also, I don't want to pander to people and dress just for the people. So something in between.
So, when you watch these fashion shows, do you kind of see that there's a balance between them making money and also making a statement, or do you sometimes see that it's swaying towards making a statement and they're not going to make as much money as if they were actually focusing on making things that are wearable?
Oh yeah, I see that. There's the whole gamut. There's the predictable, safe, and boring, and then within that, there are designers that do that well, make money, and there are designers that are not doing it well because I don't think they're being authentic, and I think they're just trying to copy. There's other designers. Then the other end of it, there's the kind of crazy over the top, and you look at like a lot of like Japanese designers or designers from Belgium and places like that. Some of the British designers, you know, some very over-the-top types of designers. And again, there are some that have a lot of clients and that make money, and there's some that I think are just doing it either because they feel that's what they want to do, or maybe they feel like, well, these other designers are doing it, and they're my inspiration. So it runs the gamut. I'll tell you one designer right now who's kind of in the middle, who's doing both really well, is Jeremy Scott, who has a signature line, Jeremy Scott, and he also is a designer for Moschino, the Italian brand, and he does a really great job of doing things that, if you look at his things, if you're not familiar with them, you're going to say, who is wearing these? But they're selling out like of these things. And he actually is a very clever designer. And I'm not somebody who loves trend, but I actually love what he's doing right now. And it's a very interesting thing. And obviously, the styling for me is really important, and he gets the styling right. And a lot of these designers don't even do the styling themselves for the shows. They hire stylists. So to go back to that question, designers and stylists do different things and need each other.
There are countless fashion programs on TV and even more magazines dedicated to it. Are you amazed with how much it's grown as opposed to when you were a kid? Was the industry this intense, or was the media this impressed by fashion when you were a kid, or has it just taken leaps and bounds through social media becoming a thing as well?
I think it was. I mean, going back, because I'm really into movies and old movies, so I've watched tons of old movies, and you have to remember, people would buy magazines and want to see pictures of, you know, all the stars, what they were wearing, you know. Marilyn Monroe, Elizabeth Taylor, Natalie Wood, they were really always into that. And, I think people were always into that. I feel that America was maybe behind Europe because I think, you know, fashion was so big in Italy and France for so long. And I think America took some time to catch up to it. So I would say that I'm not really surprised, and I actually wish there was more on TV. I mean, there's so many shows about real estate and food, and I'm not a foodie at all. So for me, I'm like, I want more style and fashion shows on TV. They're not enough for me.
Yeah, our television here is killed by renovation and cooking shows. Oh my God. And The Biggest Loser. That's about it.
Yeah, it's about eating then losing the weight.
Yeah, it's about cooking the food, then losing the weight, then building a house that you're happy in.
Exactly. And for me, it's just about shopping, so I can care less about any of those things.
With so many outlets for fashion, do you think the industry portrays a negative body image?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say negative. Well, yes, negative, but I would say unrealistic. I mean, listen, it's been written about and talked about now for years. With Photoshop, and I mean, they use that in films now, in moving images. Actors are very controlling in their movies, and they'll work with editors and the directors and say, "Wait, I want you to fix this on me and this on me," and that's moving images now. So, yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, with all the filters on Instagram and all the apps and programs you can use to manipulate your own photos, I think just knowing that, and that's not really going away, I think, again, it's really important to teach people who are younger and teenagers that that's not real, because that's when they're forming their sense of self. And if they're trying to, match up to these other images, you don't want them to be disappointed. And one extreme obviously is just staying depressed and committing suicide. You want them to be mentally healthy people when they're growing up. So I think because you can't change that, just to publicize it more. And I think the designers have a obligation really to start casting more diversity in the fashion shows and their fashion campaigns. I mean, I've worked with so many models on shoots, and just their bodies don't look healthy a lot of times, and it's really, really, it's not fun for me to dress them. I personally like a woman that has curves. I think that is more attractive, and I prefer to dress that. And so it is dangerous, and I think you can't stop talking about it enough, because, like I said, they're like cockroaches. It's not going to go away now.
One celebrity you helped style, which kind of took my interest as a basketball fan, is Scotty Pippin. Is it harder to help someone who is 6'7" when all of his clothes are probably custom made? There's nothing for him in shops.
Absolutely. I've worked with a lot of different sports people, and the same with football players and obviously basketball players, and it's very challenging. And so it's a combination of it's a combination of getting things that are made to order for them, and then there's only a select number of places that are big and tall, and just like for plus size women and petite, that is growing for men, the big and tall selection, but it is really, really challenging for sure. And everybody wants to feel kind of quote normal. And when you're 6'7" and you're always having this issue with pants being too short and jackets being too short, it takes a toll on you. It doesn't make you feel good, but it's always a challenge. I mean, to me, fit is less of a challenge. The more challenge to me is getting somebody out of their comfort zone and getting them away from an image that they see themselves as, that they don't want to deviate from. And usually that's something that's like maybe came from high school or in their early 20s, and you'll see that a lot with women and some men, where they hold on to this one image and it doesn't change, and you have to give them this kind of kick in the butt.
Where do you see the fashion industry going in the future? I mean, you think war, oil, social media, technology, is the fashion industry up there?
I think fashion is going to get more technical, and it's going to be all about the fabrications. With the combination of our wacky weather, our crazy schedules, the way we travel, and what we respect, the integration between technology and ourselves, I think it's going to become just a more technical thing. So I think people are still going to make references to past decades and things, but there's, I feel like there's a change in the air. Just like we're kind of on the verge of like driverless cars in the next 10 years. I feel like fashion is going to change too. Like I said, it's going to be really integrated, and it's going to be very responsive to, just our weather and our surroundings.
It would be cool, and it might kind of be a nuisance to you if someone could invent a machine that a person walks into, and it goes, and once they walk into it, the machine goes through all the stock that's available and it dresses them, but that kind of destroys the stylist's job. So I don't know if that'd work.
Hey, I wouldn't mind. That's fine. I'm not somebody who's stuck in one place. I'm all about change, and it's funny because I don't know if you're a fan of George Lucas,
Star Wars,
but his first movie, it was a futuristic movie, a sci-fi movie, of course, and it was called THX 11 something. I can't remember now. But everybody in the movie wore like the same outfit. They were all bald, and they wore like these white unitards. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. And that's a really strange thing for like a stylist to say. But there's something about the uniformity that I find really kind of beautiful. And it kind of goes back to that question about, is it fair to treat people, on what they're wearing? And I would say, no, it's not fair. I mean, my whole philosophy is if everybody wore the same thing and there was no jewelry, no makeup, and no hair, then I think we might be more forced to examine and look at the person, closer. But that would be cool. I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to get to that point. But if there are machines, we can go in and you can change your outfit like 15 times a day. I think that's cool, and I still think there'd be room for a stylist that would just be a different kind of stylist.
What's on for you for the rest of the year, and what does your day-to-day job involve? Is it you going to a store and you get customers just walking in off the street?
No, I don't get them in walking off the street. I don't really have like a brick-and-mortar place. My day-to-day job is really, it's different. That's what I love about it. I get bored easily, and I do so many different things. I'm style, and a lot of the things, quite frankly, can be very last minute. I'm a very organized person, but evidently nobody else is. And even if a celebrity knows they have somewhere to go, like 2 months in advance, I feel like you don't find out until a week or 2 weeks before. So you have to be able to kind of go with the flow with that. So, one day I could be, I'm obviously like involved in clothes and shopping a lot because that's what I need to know, and I have to keep up on that for anything I'm doing. That's always the basis of what I'm doing. So whatever city I'm in, I'm always going into stores, whether it's to buy things or just to look or to get ideas. But I'm, doing photo shoots. I'm dressing celebrities for red carpet events. I'm dressing celebrities for photo shoots. I'm working with kind of regular people just doing makeovers. I do total makeovers for people, and sometimes I bring in teams because it's not just about the clothes. Sometimes you need help with the hair and with women with makeup and, other things. I do writing for different magazines. I do critiquing for magazines and on TV. So I'm doing a lot of stuff through different media, which I really, really enjoy, because for me it's about helping people, teaching people, and making it so when I go to an airport I don't get totally offended.
And finally, where can people find you?
They can find me pretty much anywhere. You know how to spell my name, Eric Himel, which is Erichimel. You can find me on my website, find me on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Pinterest, on YouTube. You can find me under your bed, probably. So as long as you can spell my name, you can find me.
Eric, it's been a pleasure. It's really interesting talking to you. Something, as I said, I know nothing about, but I think I've learnt quite a little bit, and it's about exploring and about, yeah, going outside the box and having a little bit of fun with it. So, thank you for talking to me today. It's been a pleasure.
For sure, you asked great questions, and I'm definitely glad you learned something and passed that knowledge on.